Hello friends, my name is Marines, and I asked a bunch of booktube and Twitter friends to tell me their favorite and least favorite reads of the year. So today you will be getting a video with all of the participants' least favorite picks, and tomorrow you'll be able to see their favorites.
Hey guys, it's Hannah from A Clockwork Reader.
Hi everyone, my name is Leia over at Hi I Love Books.
Hi, I'm Kayla from Heroic Pages.
Hello everybody, my name is Lily, I'm from Sweet Love Books.
My name is Amanda and I vlog on the channel Musical Poem.
Hi everyone, I'm Trina from the channel Between Chapters.
Hello, I'm Karina.
Hey guys, it's Kirsty from Melbourne on My Mind.
Hey guys, my name is Raul from the channel Latin Lector.
Hi, I'm Arthur and my channel is Chapter Select.
Hi, my name is Kayla Rain from my channel named Kayla Rain.
Hi everyone, so I'm Tom from tomfromhr.com.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Daniela from Daniela Books.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. Normally I film on my channel Book Chats, but today I am so excited to participate in this collaborative video on Mari's channel. My name is Marina.
My least favorite book this year was Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. Maybe some of you are like, not A Court of Thorns and Roses? No friends. Not. Because while that was also terrible, I have to give the edge to Shatter Me for not only being a terrible story, but being written in an absolutely nonsensical way. I know that there's a reason it was written that way. The main character is like mentally unstable, emotionally unstable, and so we read the book through her point of view and it reads that way, like someone completely disconnected from reality. But to me, instead of becoming something that was poetic or that helped the prose, it was absolutely a distraction. This book read like word spaghetti thrown up against the wall, and whatever stuck is what Mafi ended up putting in the final version. And unfortunately, all of these bad words were telling just a flimsy story that was propped up against this inflated dystopian world that really meant nothing, because what was at the heart of it was this girl and the boys that she interacts with, and all of the boys like her, and all of those silly tropes that you often find in YA. I did not enjoy 1 second of reading this book.
My least favorite book may be somewhat of a controversial one, but it has to be Shatter Me, the first book in the Shatter Me trilogy by Tahira Mafi. I think the hype kind of got to me with this book, and I was expecting a lot more out of it than I actually got, and it just ended up kind of being a disappointment for me. So it has to be my least favorite book I've read this year.
My least favorite book for 2015 is Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi. This book really disappointed me. It was just not my type of book. Also, it didn't help that I was going into this book thinking I was gonna read a superhero story, because the back tells you that it's a thrilling superhero story, and it wasn't. I wasn't a fan of the writing, the love triangle. It's just not a book that I enjoy.
My least favorite read is Reboot by Emmy Tintera. This I gave a 1 out of 5 stars because I really just did not like this book at all. I did not like the insta-love and the way that changed characters' decisions to do things, and I want to punch this book.
Jumping onto the other spectrum of the year, I think my least favourite read, again it was hard, there was about 3 at the bottom that I had a hard time choosing between, but I think I have to say that my least favourite was The Sin Eater's Daughter by Melinda Salisbury. I just had really high expectations for this book, and I actually really enjoyed the first 100 pages of this novel, but after the first 100 pages everything just kind of fell apart for me and went downhill, and I just didn't understand why anything had to happen, what the characters were doing. I just was so frustrated by this book, and there were multiple times when I would be reading the book and kind of just look up. Like, you know, like Ben Wyatt does in Parks and Rec, he looks into the camera kind of judgmentally. I felt like that.
The worst book I read in 2015 is Ransom Rake's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I feel like there was so much potential with the plot, and there was a lot of possibilities that it could have gone, but the way it was done and the plot, I guess, route that he chose for the story, it just really wasn't for me. I found it really hard to care or be engaged or even like to believe at a certain point. I understand it's the kind of book where you require a suspension of disbelief. It is like a fantasy book, but I just couldn't make it work for me, and I was reading this on an airplane and I was so disenchanted with it on an airplane that while on the plane I decided to not read and to try and sleep, and we all know how hard sleeping on a plane is. I think that kind of sums up my feelings about that book.
I'm gonna say going in that I knew I probably would not like this book. It is a book I read for a challenge where I had to read a book with a bad review, and this book has an epic bad review. Like, I love it so much. It's on Smart Expletives Trashy Books, which is a great like romance novel review website. The book is The Playboy Shakes Virgin Stable Girl by Sharon Kendrick. It's part of Harlequin Presents. It started out so bad it was hilarious, but then it got a little less bad and it just became offensive. And offensive in a way that it felt like it was written like in the old days of romance where sometimes the protagonist is a little too like overbearing and controlling, and the male protagonist and the female protagonist is a little too like, just do whatever, and it's just frustrating. And it felt like that, except it's supposedly set in the modern day and was written fairly recently. The money line that is like gonna make you decide whether or not to read the review of this book or the book itself, although I recommend the review over the book. This happens when we meet our male hero for the first time. He comes riding in on a horse, and this is what happens. Khalik dismounted with the same speed and grace as he would remove himself from the body of a woman he had just made love to.
My least favorite book this year has been Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews.
My least favorite read of the year was Slammed by Colleen Hoover. I know so many people love Colleen and they love this book, but it just was not for me. I know it's her first book and maybe I should cut her some slack, but I found the writing and the story and the characters to be very corny and cliche. I hated the relationship that was portrayed in this book. I felt it was very unhealthy. The girl kind of let herself be walked all over, and the guy was very controlling. He liked to make decisions for her. I also did not appreciate the way that trauma and grief were used as plot twists and as plot devices to make the reader feel emotionally manipulated into liking these characters. This book also relies on sexual assault as a plot device to bring about the conclusion, and I did not appreciate that. And the conclusion was something that these characters could have come up with on their own. I did not like this book. 0 out of 10, do not recommend.
Let's start with my least favorite read of the year, which was the first Game of Thrones book. I didn't like this book, and well, I had an apprehension I wouldn't like the book before I started reading it, and I only read it because of the Game of Thrones read-along in March that Mari took part in, as well as Trina from Between Chapters, and I had this book sitting on my shelves for so long that I needed the push to finally get to reading it, and there's so many pages where nothing happens and he's just talking about stuff, and I didn't give a damn, and also I just didn't like the way he wrote the book, especially every time it came to the topic of sex or sexual organs or anything like that, because he's like writing so prudish, and I'm sorry, but I can't take my 2015 feminist brain out of the equation, so it was a struggle for me and I didn't like it.
Flat out, my least favourite book of the year would be Twilight, which we recapped for Snark Squad, but I'm discounting rereads from this selection solely because it feels like cheating when I knew I was going to hate the book going into it. So my least favourite book of the year, hands down, was All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. It's a contemporary YA book. It had a huge amount of hype around it. Basically everybody who isn't me loved this book, but I read this book in February, it's now December, and I am still full of rage about it. Basically, my reasons for hating this book are the fact that the characters effectively became personifications of their mental illnesses. The characters essentially had no personality and no character development outside of the fact that they had a mental illness. It was incredibly predictable, and it basically filled me with rage from start to finish because it essentially ended up saying that if you have a mental illness, you are fucked.
For my least favorite book that I read in 2015, I picked The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I don't know, this book just didn't do it for me. It felt kind of like a fairy tale retelling, sort of, but I don't know, the characters didn't really speak to me. The plot was a little muddled. I didn't really enjoy the writing too much. I might end up rereading it just to kind of give it another shot, but I only gave this like a 2-star this year.
This is one of those books that I picked up from the library, and if I didn't pick it up from the library, I also wouldn't be able to show it because I would have set it on fire. And that is 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. So I read this book at the beginning of the year as part of a live show group, and I was hesitant to join, but I saw the cover and I was like, I'll do it. I thought it was terrible. When I went reading through this, I took notes because I was going to do the live show and I knew I needed to prepare. I have 20 pages of notes. I think that I can analyze my own psychosis by looking over those notes and just seeing how annoyed I was by just tiny things in this book. This follows a young girl named Marguerite whose parents are scientists and inventors, and her father has been murdered by somebody that Marguerite knows, and so Marguerite gets the brilliant plan to go after him. Marguerite as a character is bland, she is not well written, and an idiot. Because she has no plan. She doesn't have any training, any skills, she doesn't have any weapons, she just kind of goes. And I will say this, I won't explain any actual worlds really, but the different dimensions that they go into are the most uninspired things I think I've ever read. But the biggest thing that annoyed me about this book, honestly, was the fact that it got published. And it's not because it's just a bad book in general, but it's because it's a lazy book. It is written so lazily on the part of Claudia Gray, and it definitely has that feeling of, okay Claudia, you've written a successful book before, now we need you to write another one by next year. What can you give us?
My least favorite book of the year was book 2 in the Beautiful Creatures series, Beautiful Darkness. I got as far as page 90. Everything I loved about the first book was gone. There was nothing pulling me in, nothing that made me want to keep reading. The characters became whiny and sullen, and I guess there is a reason why they're that way, but I didn't care enough about them anymore to keep reading all of that baloney.
This one might be a little bit controversial, I'll just go ahead and warn you, but it is Paper Towns by John Green. Now, this was not the worst book I read in 2015, but it was the most disappointing. I have previously read 2 other books by John Green and loved them, still give them glowing recommendations, but this book just had 2 particular things that just really turned me off to it, and I couldn't enjoy it. So first of all, the main character, Q. Oh, he is the worst. I just hate reading very one-dimensional characters, and Q's whole purpose throughout this entire book is just gotta get the girl, gotta fulfill that fantasy of, you know, getting the manic pixie dream girl. Q is also one of the most pretentious characters I think I've ever read. The other thing that I just did not enjoy was the problematic parent-child relationships that were in this book. I understand that the relationship between Margot and her parents was problematic, but there was no exploration there. It was just kind of thrown out there very loosely, and then we moved on. The rest of the parent-child relationships in this book were basically like, ugh, parents, they're the worst. Like, my parents love me and give me a great supportive home, but ugh, they just don't get me. And they're just lame, and I am just beyond my years, and parents. Ugh, am I right? Oh, that drives me crazy when YA books just completely disregard parents.
The worst book I read in 2015 was Armada. I liked Ernest Cline's other one, Ready Player One. It felt like almost because he got so much success from Ready Player One, no one really bothered to edit this book or look at it or read it with much of a critical eye, if I can be honest with you. It's full of tropes and predictable ideas. It's never once kind of turned anything on its head. It read like fan fiction, like Mary Sue. He's an angry nerd who, you know, is famous for being angry and beating up a school bully, you know. It's like what every nerd dreams of doing, essentially, you know. He has this mom who he describes as very, very hot, to the point where it's all from his perspective, and you're kind of going like, do you two need to be alone or something here? Like, just no, again, it's all very, very, very predictable. I didn't like it. It felt like fantasy fulfillment.
My least favorite book this year gives an insult to the words YA fantasy, and that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I'm gonna describe a few big aspects to you so you can get a general sense of how I feel about it, instead of just a blind opinion of I hate this book for reasons. Okay, for her settings, I'm gonna liken it to this. You know when you're taking a selfie and you bring the image to an editing app so you sort of blur out the background to make yourself stand out? That's kind of like every single setting in every Sarah J. Maas book. And as for plot, I mean, try explaining these books in one sentence to someone. It's not like 2 hobbits go on a quest to Mordor to save the world. It's more like One teen girl does nothing for 2 books before the author decides to finally turn it into a teen power revolution like everything else. And lastly, I'm supposed to talk about the characters, but sadly I don't have the words nor the time to properly convey my absolute abhorrence for these sad cardboard cutouts of characters. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you to all of my lovely volunteers and participants. All of their information will be linked down in the description. Don't forget that I'll be back tomorrow with a favorites video so you can see what everybody called their favorite read of 2015. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. The number of emails I got, like, why do I have to pick one? Are you sure it only has to be one? How about if I pick 2? Booktubers.